Let's now bring in my all-star panel. Van Jones, senior contributor and president of Rebuild the Dream, conservative radio talk show host Dana Loesch, and Grover Norquist, the president of Americans for Tax Reform and an NRA board member. Welcome to you all. Van Jones, I just spoke again to Richard Feldman, who was pretty close to the NRA leadership for quite a while, and the message is loud and clear from the NRA, as it always is. More guns, and you'll deal with gun violence. What do you say to that?
Well, I just think people are just flabbergasted to hear this. I mean, the idea that the kind of gun, the size of gun, the kind of magazine, none of this matters, well then fine. Just pass out bazookas. Start selling neutron bombs on the open market. And then when people start using the bazookas and doing crazy, say, well, it's not the bazooka owner. You see, it's just, I mean, it's not the bazooka, it's just the bazooka owners. Obviously, the size of the cartridge matters. Obviously, the kind of weapon matters. That's why you can't buy bazookas, you can't buy neutron bombs, you can't buy weaponized drones, because these things matter. It's very, very frustrating. The shame that I see right now is that, on the one hand, we're not doing enough about mental health, but then we have people who are hiding behind the fact that we're not doing one thing to stop us from doing anything else, and that's wrong, too.
I mean, Marco Rubio says today he's warned that he will filibuster any new gun legislation. Dana Loesch, how can that be an appropriate response to what happened at Sandy Hook?
Well, simply, Piers, because we have gun laws already on the books. Most of the proposals are simply redundancy. That's why. Why are we paying individuals to go and essentially waste taxpayer dollars to argue laws that we already have on the books, laws which either aren't enforced or criminals don't obey them simply because that's what criminals don't do. Criminals are called criminals because they don't follow law.
Right, so Adam Lanza had 2 rifles, a BB gun, a starter pistol, 4 more weapons he took to school, including the AR-15, 1,600 rounds of ammunition in his house, 12 knives, 3 samurai swords, a bayonet, eye protection, earmuffs for a gun range, Simmons binoculars, paper targets, etc., etc., etc. And he went and did what he did. At what point, Dana, do you say, you know what, we're just going to make it tougher for people to be able to have this kind of arsenal?
Well, Piers, you realize that Adam Lanza, according to the LA Times, the Portland Observer, numerous local media reports in Connecticut, he did try to purchase a firearm. And Connecticut's gun laws prohibited him from doing that. Those gun laws worked in the sense that they prohibited him from purchasing a firearm. Now, as to whether or not his mother should have had her firearms perhaps stored a little bit better and kept away from her son, that's another topic of discussion. But, you know, again, he stole firearms. He committed a crime to obtain a firearm, which he then used illegally.
Grover Norquist, you're on the board of the NRA, and the NRA, it seems to me, has a lot of very reasonable members, many of whom tweet me, and if you're watching now, you want to tweet me, at Piers Morgan, let me know if you're an NRA member. And they're quite rational, and they say, look, you know, we have no real problem with background checks. We don't have any problem with more investment in mental health and so on. Not even much of a problem with the high-capacity magazines. They're not too sure about assault weapons, but they're quite rational in what they say. But the leadership always seemed to me to be, particularly Wayne Lapierre, completely outrageous, utterly insensitive, totally uncompromising. Why is that?
Well, I think if you look at the history of gun laws, make a list of which cities and states have the most oppressive gun laws. You'll find they also have more crime and more shootings. There's actually, if you look at the science, you know, liberals are always saying we should look at the science, and yet they don't want to look at the existing science on whether gun laws make us safer or less safe. John Lott did the first study of all the counties in the United States, and where you had concealed carry permits, more gun ownership by citizens, you actually had significantly less crime, hundreds and thousands of fewer murders, fewer rapes. What you don't have reported in the news is the fact that those states that put in concealed carry laws decades ago and have more people carrying guns are safer to live in than ones that ban it. So when you ask, why don't we do something stupid, the answer is because we've looked at the statistics, because we've looked at the science, and flat earthers should not be passing new laws. Well,
let me throw some science at you. How do you explain that, as I said to Mr. Feldman earlier, America has between 11 and 12,000 gun murders a year, 18,000 gun suicides a year, 100,000 Americans are hit by gunfire a year. And you look at someone like Britain, or you look at someone like Australia, or Japan, or I could name dozens of other countries that have pretty strict gun control laws and just have negligible gun deaths. I mean, literally like 40 or 50 people a year get killed. How do you explain that, Grover, in any rational way that convinces me that countries that don't have guns in mass circulation have almost no gun crime?
Well, if you compare apples and apples and look in the United States, I mean, obviously Brazil and South Africa and other countries have a great number of gun crimes, and they have very serious gun laws. So gun laws haven't solved the problem in other countries. And where you've put in more gun laws in Australia and Britain, you've had more crime in general, more robberies, more crime. They've become less safe. Now, in the United States, compare the states, 50 or 57, however you want to count them. They've all got different gun laws,
Okay,
they have
Van,
different rules.
let me get Van in here. Let me get Van in here, because he's shaking his head vigorously. Van?
Yeah, well, first of all, that's just actually not true. But I want to say a couple things. This is not about concealed carry.
It is true.
Hold on a second. It's not true.
You can't deny the science. You're a science denier, Van.
Are you going to let me talk? You got a
Let's not be
wonderful
flat
time
earthers
talking.
about gun laws, guys, and statistics.
Hey, listen, I'm with you. I'm for stats and statistics. Here's what's actually true. This is not a debate about concealed carry. You want to move the argument over to something that nobody's arguing about. Nobody's arguing about concealed carry. People are arguing about military-style weapons on the streets of America and whether or not that is a good thing or a bad thing.
That's a false premise. That's a false premise.
No, that's not. It's a false premise.
No, Van, do you actually know what the difference is? I'm going to correct you because I'm tired of this talking point being put out there. First and foremost, let's get something straight. Military-style assault weapons are not out on the street. We are talking about semi-automatic weapons, weapons that are capable of select fire or weapons that are fully automatic. Then you can use... No, I'm not going to let this go anymore, Piers.
No, Dana, you said this repeatedly on my show.
Let's stop conflating. Let's stop playing a bunch of ignorance and let's stop conflating.
General Stanley McChrystal used the phrase. So forget us, forget Van, forget me. One of the great military commanders of the last 20 years in America said these were military-style weapons. So is he wrong? Do you know more about these weapons than General McChrystal does?
General McChrystal is also of your same ideology, so I want to put that out there first and foremost. There is a deliberate effort to conflate the types of firearms. I do not own a military-style assault weapon. Just because of what a firearm looks scary, then you call it military assault. Do you realize that one of my children has a BB gun that looks like an AR-15? Is that going to be considered a military-style assault weapon? It sounds silly and uneducated.
Adam Lanza killed. Wait a minute. Adam Lanza killed.
It's dangerous.
Adam Lanza, as we now know, in the space of 300 seconds, using an AR-15, killed 26 people, Dana. He had magazines with 30 bullets. Are you telling me?
And he reloaded 4 times. Anyone can reload.
Are you telling me that
anyone can reload?
Dana, let me finish. Are you telling me that doesn't qualify as an assault weapon?
By the technical definition, no, Piers. Anything can be qualified as an assault weapon. If you stab someone with a spoon, it can be qualified as an assault weapon.
So you're equating stabbing somebody with a spoon to shooting dead 26 people.
If this is a conversation about a ban on magazine capacity,
really? You're talking about stabbing somebody with a spoon?
Piers, you can take a speed loader and reload a revolver. 150 rounds, that means he had to reload 4 times. And the only reason that he stopped was because he heard authorities. No, Van, this is the strategy of the people who actually deliberately want to disarm individuals. You guys talk about magazine, you talk about magazine restrictions.
Okay, let Van have his say.
See, this is a conscious strategy on the part of the pro-gun folks to constantly bring things back around to things that don't make any sense. You're talking about people stabbing people with spoons. If that were the problem we had in America, people stabbing people with spoons, we wouldn't be talking about this right now. What we're talking about is funeral after funeral after funeral. What we're talking about is our children being gunned down, and what we're talking about is common sense measures, not confiscating guns. We're not talking about that. We're talking about common sense measures that 90% of Americans agree with and that the majority of gun owners agree with. But when you guys get on television, you don't talk like the people who actually are the gun owners in America. What you talk like are people who want to take the conversation in a direction that has nothing to do.
And by the way, CBS, the latest CBS poll shows that support for these gun control measures is tanking. This is is about disarmament. Let me ask you. Yes, no. Let me finish my thought because I have a very logical thought that I want to let you answer. I'm tired of this conflation and this uneducation when it comes to using terms about firearms. Let's use accurate terms so that people know what we're talking about. If this is about limiting the number of children dying, let's talk about magazine capacity. Why, if 30-round magazine capacity isn't okay, then what's the difference between 30 rounds and what's the difference between 7 rounds? Piers Morgan, let me ask you a question. How many children, how many deaths are okay to you? How many deaths are okay to you? Answer that question.
Let me ask you a question. The difference between 30 and 7 is 23. So it could save 23 lives if there was a federal
So 7's okay with
on
you
any of these magazines.
7 lives lost are okay with you then.
And you actually, no, you know what, Dana?
This is ridiculous.
Okay, I understand that. 7 lives lost are okay.
7 is better than 30.
7 lives lost to you are all right.
30 are okay with you.
Dana, is better than losing 30. Yes, it is.
I'm just trying to establish where you draw the line. Where do you draw the line at preventing the deaths of children, Piers? I mean,
I would love to draw the line.
Any loss of life is horrible. But
I would love to draw the line, Dana, at 0 gun deaths in America
every year. So you do believe
in
disarmament then?
I said
so you
0
do believe
gun
in disarmament?
Deaths. 0 gun deaths.
That's the answer that I wanted.
When did I say disarmament? No, wait a minute. You talk about conflating the argument.
Piers,
Dana, when did I say disarmament?
No. I'm taking it down. I'm using your logic and going down that road. If you're talking about limiting magazines, first and foremost, any magazines are universal. I can make one in my garage.
I said I wanted 0. I said I wanted 0 gun deaths.
Let's take that and throw that out. Okay,
let me finish. We have to go to a break, but you said I said I wanted 0 gun deaths. You announced that meant I wanted disarmament. That's the problem with the pro-gun debate.
About your logic
let's take a break.
When it comes
anyway,
to magazine
let's all calm down. Come back and talk about gay marriage. I'm sure.
I want to respond to Dana.
Well, that's going to be even more lively, probably. So let's try that.